The inside-out emotions defined as the affects in Ethics by Spinoza. So I think a lot of times in this day and age, when people think of understanding and managing their emotions, they think of the very popular Inside Out movies by Disney. So when we get to the end of this third part by Spinoza, we come to a very big passage where he titles it The Definitions of the Affects. And he actually covers 48 different affects here. By no means all of them, but definitely something to consider. And we'll start by looking at joy for Spinoza. Joy is a man's passage from a lesser to a greater perfection. So, right, you're actually increasing your state of perfection. Of course, that's something to be joyful for. Versus the contrary here of sadness. Sadness is a man's passage from a greater to a lesser perfection. Something to be sad about, for sure. Moving on to fear. Spinoza says fear is an inconstant sadness, born of the idea of a future or past thing whose outcome we have some extent to doubt. So when we're fearful, we're thinking about the future or the past, and we're a little doubtful of what has happened or what is to come. That's going to make us afraid. Moving on to envy, we see hate associated here. Spinoza says envy is hate insofar as it affects a man, that he is saddened by another's happiness, and conversely glad at his ill fortune. To envy one commonly opposes compassion. So envy, the opposite of compassion. So we're either sad that someone else is happy, or we're glad that they're sad. Right? So envy, not a positive one to be having here. Moving on to anger. We also see that anger for Spinoza is desire by which we are spurred from hate to do evil to what we hate, right? All negative here. Again, associated with hate, just like envy is, but we actually want to do harm, right? We actually want to do hateful, evil things to someone. That's what anger is for Spinoza. Moving on to disgust. This is not actually one that Spinoza explicitly defines, but looking at his definition for desire, we could imagine that if Spinoza were to take on disgust, he could say that it would be as a sated appetite, right? We had this desire, and now we're so full of it, we have totally sated or satisfied that appetite, so now we're just disgusted by the thing. We don't want it around us anymore. Moving on to ennui, or boredom. Spinoza also does not address this, but again, if we go into, he has a rather lengthy definition on desire. If we look at that again, we could maybe pull out of it that for Spinoza, ennui or boredom could be the lack of desire. Right, we have no desire to strive towards or to persevere towards anything. We're just kind of bored. Moving on to anxiety. Again, he does not touch anxiety specifically again, but I think in this case under fear, if we look under Spinoza's definition for fear, we can start to define anxiety as a fear of a future specifically without hope. So no hope associated with the future here, going to leave us feeling very anxious for Spinoza. And finally, embarrassment. Again, this is a bit of a complex emotion that Spinoza doesn't touch on, but I would like to look at shame here. He just defines shame. Could be comparable. So Spinoza says shame is a sadness accompanied by the idea of some action of ours which we imagine that others blame. Right? So if we're embarrassed, we're sad, that we think something we did, people are going to blame us for it, and that could leave us feeling pretty embarrassed. So I thought this was a fun thought experiment to play with and to run through. I hope you found this entertaining.